Welcome back to Change My Mind in 15 Minutes, the podcast where we discuss any and everything pertaining to hot takes. I'm here with my co-host, Zach Frankham, as always. Zach, what are we talking about today?
Today, Brenton, we got a really hot topic to discuss. Everyone knows BYU basketball this year has been arguably the most hyped it's ever been here in Provo. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
I would say
Definitely.
I
I
agree.
mean, signing number one recruit in the class, AJ DeBonsa.
First time we've ever done it.
First time we've ever signed a five-star.
Alleged $6 million NIL deal.
I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Right? So I think a lot of people are focused on BYU basketball right now. We've got our two experts here with us today, Kyle and Jackson, BYU basketball analytic fanatics is what we like to call them. Our hot take today that we want to discuss with you guys is Richie Saunders arguably being the MVP of the team this year. I know it's a hot take. I know a lot of people don't think that.
Is a hot
right?
take.
With AJ on the team, I mean, we've got a pretty stacked lineup. But Richie, I think it's hard to argue against his, importance for the team.
Well, and especially I think we've had this topic in mind for a while now. Mm-hmm. We weren't expecting Richie to obviously, unfortunately, go out with a season-ending injury. Mm-hmm. I think we have maybe a little more ground to stand on now that we've seen the last 5-game skid that BYU's been on since Richie's been out. And so I wanted to hear a little bit from our experts. What are we thinking with Richie Saunders' contributions? Is it more impactful than potentially AJ, potentially the number one draft pick this next year, or would you say that is not a take that should be made?
I would say I actually agree with that. I think, and most important player-wise for BYU, it would be Richie. Obviously, AJ is the best player, the most talented player on the BYU basketball team, probably in college basketball.
I don't know.
You think it's Richie?
I don't know. Well, I think Richie affects BYU's win percentage more than AJ does. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't argue that. I'm just saying AJ is the most talented player in college basketball.
Okay. I see where you're coming
Kyle, you've been a BYU fan longer than all of us. Where do you stand?
Well, you're wrong, first of all. Look, Richie Saunders is awesome. Look, he's a tot king for a reason other than just, his heritage. He is amazing, but you have to take it more in this way. Think about this. If there was no AJ, if there was no Rob Wright, could Richie Saunders carry the team? So when you're talking about the most important, most impactful person on the team this year, and your take is saying what? Richie is the MVP?
Richie, yeah. Most important player on the floor.
I think that he's important, obviously more important than the bench. Mm-hmm. I think what you're experiencing is the bench.
We have no bench.
that it's not because Richie's out, it's because there's no bench. But Richie in himself, could he carry the team?
And I guess to stand on Kyle's side for a minute here, we look at Richie Saunders last year. He had Yegor Denman as kind of the forefront. And without Yegor, was there a Sweet 16 run for the BYU basketball team? I guess that's something that could be up for debate because we look 1 year prior to that when Coach Pope was still heading out the BYU Cougars. We didn't look as good and we were a first-round exit to Duquesne, I think it was. I don't remember what the college was.
Pittsburgh native Duquesne.
Yeah.
I understand everything you're saying. Jackson, I want to hear your takes. Why do you think Richie is more important than AJ in terms of winning? I don't think the argument is that Richie's better than AJ in any way, right? AJ arguably is the best player in college basketball, most likely the number one pick in the draft. But when it comes to BYU-specific team performance, you would say Richie is better than AJ.
Yeah, for me, I feel like I just look at what someone does on the court, and Richie was kind of like the heart and soul of the team. When he's out there, it looked like the team was just having so much fun. They all rallied around him because he's the 4-year senior. He is BYU. Everyone on the team was like, yeah, Richie Saunders is our guy. He's the guy who's been here the longest. He's our leader. And when you look at that, you see that the players just loved him. You could see even the fans. When he went down with his ACL injury in the Colorado game, everyone was heartbroken. Yeah. Everyone went dead silent. And
you were saying that it wouldn't have been the same if that had happened to AJ.
That's not what I was saying, no. But
put words in his mouth over here, my co-host.
I was just for me personally, I think being a BYU fan for my whole life, I think I would have been more heartbroken with Richie going down than AJ going down because AJ is a 1-year guy. He's most likely going to be one and done. And Richie is the heart and soul of BYU basketball. And with that too, I was looking at some stats earlier. In games that he scored 20+ points in, Richie scored 20+ points in, we were 10-2 with one of those losses being at Kansas. Like probably the hardest place to play in basketball.
Also, arguably Richie's best game of his career was
And
that Kansas.
it was probably the best.
What do you
game
have,
of his
36
career.
in that game?
He had like
Kansas?
36 and no one else scored.
Yeah,
It was just
it was
him.
rough.
Knocked down something
Rough
crazy.
AJ game there.
7 or
Yeah,
8
we don't see
threes,
those
too.
very often. That was a rough AJ game.
It was a rough AJ game.
Darren Peterson kind of showed him up in that one.
Just
We
the
don't need
first
to get
half.
into Darren Peterson. We
don't
love
talk
you,
about-
AJ. We would
we
love
don't-
you to stay in Provo.
We don't
one
want to
more year.
talk about Darren Peterson.
Well, I have a bunch of statistics just from people that we've interviewed on BYU campus. I know that Zach has delved a little. Zach has delved a little bit
That's
more
fair.
into the statistics behind Richie and AJ when they're both on the court, when one is on the court. Let's go more with a statistical analysis. Zach, why are you arguing the way you argue before we kind of jump into BYU students' opinions?
Well, great intro, Brenton. Thank you for that. I think the biggest reason, I obviously didn't always think that Richie was the MVP of the team. I think the eye test clearly shows that when AJ's on the floor, it's electric, right? You never know what's going to happen. You never know what he's going to do. Richie definitely, I think, takes a back seat in regards to star power when AJ's out there on the court. But when I dove into these stats, that's what kind of changed my mind, is looking at, the offensive efficiency ratings with Richie on the floor versus when he's not on the floor, is kind of what did it for me. So I'll get into some stuff with you right now. BYU's overall offensive efficiency rating with, the whole team playing throughout the year, average through all the games, is 126. What that means is per 100 possessions, the team is going to score 126 points in a game. Yeah. Usually teams are only getting, 70 to 80 possessions, so that's why you're not seeing, a 126 final game score always. But that's kind of what BYU's been at this year. When you look at, the last 5 games, say that's when Richie went out. That Colorado game, first 2 plays of the game, he goes out with a non-contact ACL. Yeah. I mean, that's heartbreaking, right? When we dive into the stats on that, we see that pre-injury, the average offensive efficiency rating for BYU was 121 points per 100 possessions, right? After Richie's injury in these last 5 games, and I know it's a small sample size, but still 5 games better than 1 game, right? The offensive efficiency rating dropped to 107 points per game, or points per 100 possessions. That's a 13.6 point decrease in just those 5 games.
I think part of what would need to be taken into account with that is the next 2 games following Richie's injury was number 4, Arizona, U of A.
Absolutely.
And number 6, Iowa State, right?
Definitely.
And so I think our overall offensive efficiency rating is going to be a little lower when we're playing a 1 seed and a 2 seed in the March Madness.
I mean, it's
Right.
very
Right.
true,
Sure.
but I mean, that's just the Big 12. I mean, it's the nature of the Big 12. It's the best basketball conference in the country. I mean, that's what we've been seeing all year. And so, I mean, it definitely is, like I said, it's a small sample size, but it's worth noting, right? A 10-point difference per 100 possessions is a pretty huge swing, right? And so that takes you from maybe a top 15 offense in the country to almost below average. And that's just with Richie Saunders being out of the game, right? Another thing that I looked at and another thing that I'd like to bring up is individual player offensive efficiency ratings, right? We obviously have AJ, Richie, and Rob. That's kind of our big 3, right? They account for, I mean, it's some crazy stat, 70% of all of our points. Do you know what it is?
Oh, I'm sure it's at least
Something. I mean, it's
yeah.
high, right? We have no bench presence, right? And that's just kind of how the team is formed this year. But if we look specifically at Richie and AJ's offensive efficiency ratings, we see that AJ has a rating of 121 per 100 possessions. It's the same type of metric, right? Per 100 possessions that ends in an AJ point, free throw, or turnover is what creates this number. So we have 121 for AJ. You have any guesses what Richie Saunders' offensive efficiency rating would be?
157.
150. Okay, so we got a real Richie lover over here. 157. That'd be the highest of all time. 127. 127.6 is Richie's offensive efficiency
little
rating.
Just
higher
this year?
than
Just
AJ.
this year,
Okay.
right? 2025, Richie, right? You talked about Yegor Demon, another top 10 pick in the draft from last year's team. I mean, he took up a lot of the points, right? He took up a lot of the usage of the team, right?
Yeah.
Point-wise, maybe not as much, but he definitely had the ball in his hands more than anybody else.
All right.
Richie's offensive efficiency rating last year was 128.7. So he's actually dropped 1 point in efficiency from last year to this year, obviously because of AJ and Rob. right? You have two guys who can score lights out no matter what, whenever they want to. But
And-
still, I think it's important to note. I mean, that's a 6-point difference, right? So per 100 possessions, Richie is scoring 6 more points than AJ is.
So I guess if you look at the stats, Richie Saunders has a higher offensive efficiency than AJ does. Kyle, how much would you attribute that to AJ always taking a double team or always taking the best defender from whoever is playing against us?
Yeah, exactly. So I would say the knock against AJ, other than just being young and new, which nobody gave him that credit, right? Nobody gave him that grace. I would say he came in and he was supposed to immediately be the dominant player. He had to learn the college game a little bit. So I would say some of that is early in the year,
Definitely.
at least early in the Big 12. Some of that, and then second to that is he gets the double team. Richie Saunders does not get the double team every time. I think also that efficiency rating from last year, one of the interesting parts of that is Yegor Dimon, who was a great assist leader.
True.
And Rob Wright isn't a great assist leader. I mean, he can play the point guard position well. Obviously, that's why he's one of the big three. But he likes to score, and so that took a little bit away from Richie in that. But it also takes away from AJ. So if you notice, AJ will attract the double team, which leaves it open for Rob Wright to be able to make it. So I'm not saying that I don't love Richie and that he isn't the heart and soul. I mean, there's no question. He's much more the fan favorite in that way. But I don't know that you simply take Richie away and that's it. Or I think the same could be said if you take AJ away. If you took AJ away from this year, could Richie now lead us to the Final Four?
I mean, great question, right? I like to think yes, because I just love the team, right? But when you really think about it, I think obviously the team is a lot better with AJ and Richie on the floor together. I know Brinton has some stats on BYU campus, what they've said. The last thing that I have that I think I want our viewers and you guys to stew on is there's another rating or statistic that you can look at. It's called the on-off rating. So when a certain player is on the floor versus off the floor, what's the difference in team production? So I've got a couple stats. With Rob Wright, he has a +8 on-off rating, meaning when Rob is on the floor, the team is, again, 8 points better per 100 possessions. And that's a top 15 number in the country, +8.
For Rob Wright.
For Rob Wright.
Okay.
Richie Saunders has a 9.5 on-off rating. So the team is 9.5 points better per 100 possessions when Richie specifically is on the floor. So that's when he was playing, obviously not when he's hurt,
And
when
where did
he's
that
on
rank
the
in
floor.
country?
So Richie's 9.5 is top 10
Wow.
in the country.
Okay.
So that, I mean, but we all knew that. We know Richie's good. That's not the argument. AJ's on-off rating was shocking to me. I thought it would be a lot higher. AJ's is +5.9. So we'll say +6. 6 points better per 100 possessions. So Richie's got him there, 3.5 points.
Granted, I do think you have to. I mean, AJ plays 39 minutes a night. There isn't a lot of him off the court, so there is that. But
Well, and
Very
also, what's that compared to assists? So he's double teamed and he throws it to Richie.
Well, that's a great point. This is just the rating of the entire offense when they're on the floor. So that does take into account, right? When AJ's on the floor, he's getting doubled. So teammates are getting more open shots.
Yeah.
With that, it's still +5.9. So that's something to think about overall. But I do want to hear what students on BYU
Yeah,
campus had to say.
and that's interesting. I think another stat that maybe we don't have with us today that would be interesting to look at would be how many of the shots that AJ gets up per game is a contested look versus how many shots Richie was getting up per game was a contested look versus an open look. Because at least just on the eye test, most of the BYU games I go to, I think Richie Saunders really gets hot when Rob Wright or AJ is driving to the lane and they kick it out to an open Richie Saunders on the wing who doesn't have anybody staring
Who's
down
the
his back.
best catch and shoot player?
yeah,
in
he
the
doesn't even
country.
have
No
to be that
argument that
open.
No
AJ's a
argument.
better catch and
Fastest
shoot or a
release you'll
three-point
ever
shooter,
see.
He doesn't
right?
have to be that open to get a shot up either.
No, yeah,
but-
he's like Klay Thompson, right?
Exactly.
But I think we've been talking a lot about the love that everybody has for Richie Saunders, and I don't want any of our viewers to think that any of us doesn't share that same love for Richie Saunders. We're talking purely from an efficiency rating. MVP. who helps us win games more. I think when we interviewed most people on campus, they kind of took it offensive a little bit to the sense that they think of Richie as just the heart of BYU basketball.
Yeah.
And so maybe they're a little more subjective than objective with a lot of the interviews we did.
Yeah,
People
going
that
back to what Jackson said.
Yeah, people that agreed that Richie Saunders was BYU's MVP, some of the feedback that we got on that was he's the embodiment of BYU basketball. He's been with the team the longest. He has more loyalty than any other player on the court. And I think these are things that makes Richie Saunders maybe more desirable to a fan base, but maybe necessarily isn't a super objective viewpoint to be arguing something.
Very valid.
People that disagreed that Richie Saunders was BYU MVP, some of the things that we heard was that Richie's been inconsistent compared to other players, which I think that could be argued amongst us for another 15 minutes,
Easily.
right? I don't think
Easily.
I would consider Richie Saunders an inconsistent player. I think it depends the amount of looks that he gets per game.
It depends on which year.
True.
I mean, his first year under Pope
Yeah.
was erratic,
Yep.
lots of energy, loved the guy,
Yeah.
but also not consistent.
Yeah. One, that's another conversation for another day, right? Is just the development of Richie Saunders,
Absolutely.
right? If we look at him his first year with Coach Pope, I felt like we were watching somebody that just has so much love for the game of basketball that he's willing to put his body on the line and sacrifice everything to dive on a loose ball, to make sure that a player doesn't get across the court on a fast break. And we don't really have somebody like that anymore necessarily on the BYU team. I think since Richie has gone off the court with his season-ending injury, we have had a lot more fast break points scored against us as well, because Richie does just kind of add that defensive presence in a sense that we play with urgency, and the team plays with more urgency when Richie's on the court. They said Richie hasn't fully contributed to winning games for the team, which I strongly disagree with.
I think that's just an ignorant take right there.
Most of the team has a hard time with layups, but AJ dominates. I think another interesting
That's a slight
take.
at Rob Wright right there. That's not a slight at Richie.
Love my guy Rob Wright. The next thing says Rob Wright specifically, and so they were taking a little slander
Yeah.
towards Rob Wright's maybe layup rating, which I don't know if I disagree with that specifically. I think more than anything from the interviews, what we gathered is that Richie Saunders is loved on a personal level, and we love him as a player. But the majority of people we interviewed thinks AJ is this season's most valuable player, which I don't know how hard you can argue against that, just because he is third in the nation in scoring this year and has made BYU get on the map in a lot of ways that we haven't been before.
I mean, I agree. I think it's hard to argue that AJ's not the best player on the floor. I think that's far and away the truth. But when it comes to affecting games efficiently, I think the stats prove that Richie is the more efficient player. He helps the team perform in a more efficient way. But again, that's game to game, right? That's night-on-night basis. It depends on if you're playing Holy Cross the second game of the year or when you're coming down the stretch playing. I mean, we had Arizona, Kansas, Houston, Baylor all in a row, right? Those are 5 rough games right in a row where you're asking Richie specifically, but also the entire team to carry a pretty heavy load, right? Whether that's scoring, whether that's energy, right? Whether that's bouncing around the floor. I think it's important to look at all of those kind of factors when we're debating on who is, the MVP, quote unquote, of the team.
Well, we don't have a ton more time on this podcast that we're going to be able to talk. I think we can all go through one by one, give maybe our last second pitch from what we want to get across to our viewers today, and also maybe something we've taken away if our mind's been changed at all. Kyle, we'll start with you.
Well, AJ is definitely the difference maker this team this year for this team, and there's no question that he's the MVP of the year. But the heart and soul of BYU basketball in 2025-26 is Richie Saunders.
Love that. Jackson, we'll move on to you.
Well, yeah, I think, like we said, AJ is the best player in the nation, but I do still think that Richie Saunders is the most important player for this BYU team. I just remember watching the games that the offense maybe struggled a little more. It was because the other coach really focused on shutting out Richie Saunders. And it's like you would look, yeah, AJ's getting doubled. They're not leaving Richie. They're still glued to Richie, making sure Richie doesn't get up the open shots. But yeah, just like he said, Richie Saunders is BYU basketball.
Heart of the team, heart of the school.
Yeah.
Brinton, what about you?
I came into this podcast wanting my mind to be changed because Richie Saunders is my favorite player on BYU's basketball team, but I don't think I can say with a straight face that AJ DeBonsa is not BYU's MVP. I think when you look at just the shot-making ability of AJ and the space that he creates for the rest of the team, if we didn't have AJ on the court, I think we're getting significantly less open shots every single game. And I think that makes BYU worse overall than when we take Richie off the court and we lose a lot of three-point momentum, we lose a lot of intensity, but we don't necessarily lose the top scorer in the nation, right? So I'm going to say one takeaway that I have is that Richie Saunders is beloved by all, including me. But I think if I had to have one player on the court during March Madness, I'm taking AJ 10 out of 10 times.
And that's very valid, very fair take. I think I came in with a similar mindset as you, as AJ far and away the MVP, right? But looking through these stats, for me, I'm a big numbers guy. And so looking at the numbers, it is now hard for me to completely discredit Richie Saunders, right? Obviously, the eye test is AJ DeBonsa. He's the best player in the country. He makes shots that I've never seen college kids make ever. And keep in mind, he's 18 years old, right? Like Kyle was saying, he's new to this game, college basketball. But when we're looking at advanced metrics and we're looking deep into the statistical analysis of games, it's hard to argue against Richie Saunders being that difference maker for the Cougs.
Fair enough.
But more importantly, we want to know our audience. What do you think? Was your mind changed? What did you think before? What did you think after? Is it AJ? Is it Richie? Who knows?
Yeah. And one last second thing that I want to throw in to include, I watched a video from Deseret News today where AJ was interviewed, and he was talking about the possibility of coming back for another season. He said his mom wants him to get a college degree. AJ, college is so important, and we want you to get that college degree, and we want you back here for another year. So if you're seeing this, AJ, BYU loves you, and we love you too. This has been Change My Mind in 15 Minutes. We thank Jackson and Kyle for being here today as our BYU analytic men's basketball experts. And we'll see you guys next week when we discuss another juicy hot take.
Peace.